Welcome everybody to this week's Tech Threads interview. Today I'm talking with Brennen Grimshaw, who we've known each other for a little bit. He has actually just started a AI startup called ZenStream, which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in this video. But he has a lot of experience in project management, IT project management, and now, diversifying and getting into the AI space and starting his own company in AI. So that's pretty awesome. Today we're going to kind of talk a little bit about stakeholders and also some AI stuff because Brennan is really, informed on that. So before I get started, though, Brennan, I'm going to pass it off to you to kind of explain who you are, what you do, and a little about your company that you just started. So take it over.
Yeah, thank you. So I graduated as a software engineer and then shifted over to project management because that was kind of the path I wanted to go. I wanted the technical understanding, but then kind of um, the project management side of being able to manage a lot of people across many teams. So I worked at Micron project management for 3 years. It was great. It was a really good company to work for. They're based out of Boise. Well, really big company, a lot bigger than I thought. And really diverse. There are people all over the world. I mean, I worked with people in like 6 different time zones, like every day. Like it was all over. So I was with them for 3 years, had an amazing time, and then kind of had a couple of changes in life. So I had to jump ship and decided that there was a good time to kind of follow my dream and try and start a little startup, get my feet wet. I'm not expecting it to be like the next Airbnb, but I just want to get my feet wet and like make money right now and kind of learn. It's almost like the next step was either an MBA or kind of like get my feet wet. And so I wanted to get an MBA, or I wanted to get my feet wet. I had a family that wanted
Right.
me to get an MBA. So kind of compromised there, but so now we're doing customer service, which is it's just kind of like a really big area AI can help right now. There's a lot of advancements in AI where it's kind of going to branch off of that. But AI, there's actually an article released, I think it was last week. There's a company that was called Klarna. I think they're based in Europe. I don't remember. They had 700, or they started AI customer service, and it is now doing the work of 700 employees after like a couple
Wow.
months of implementing it, which is, I mean, we can talk about that a little later, the good and
Yeah.
the bad there. But that's incredible for a company. I don't think there's anybody that's going to deny just having an agent do 700 employees worth of work. So that's kind of the
Yeah.
space. There's a lot of people in the space, but I'm more of an abundance mindset. There's a lot of businesses around there. So
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's super awesome that you're starting a startup right now, especially in AI. We just got done one of the interviews coming out. By the time this is posted, it had already come out. His name's Adam McCullough, and he's the global AI kind of guy for Microsoft. And he was just talking about how like AI right now, it's in its initial phase. It's kind of like a free zone. The playing field is very level. And like this is the time now to jump into it. So it's gonna be super cool to see that you're jumping into it with that software engineering background and kind of like building it up. And yeah, who knows, maybe you will be the next Airbnb. I think that would be pretty sick. And I think you do taking that jump would be awesome. Um, Before we kind of jump into AI, because that's kind of what I really want to talk about today, the focus of this month is more kind of like on stakeholders. And I know with, your new startup, you're working directly with clients who are the stakeholders. When you first like get these clients at your like new startup, for example, kind of what do you do to build like a good relationship with them? Because that like, is a very important thing with these stakeholders. Like, do you have any tips or things that you do to kind of establish that initial relationship and make sure it's off on the right foot?
Yeah, you just gotta, I mean, just gotta be like a normal human, like transparent. You gotta just communicate with them in a full transparent manner, like this is what I do, this is how it benefits you, this is what you'll need to do, because usually there's a two-way street there. And just treat them like people get into such like a robot mode where like,
Mhm.
especially at like big corporations, it's like we just kind of talk in a certain way, but like it's almost like there's like an underlying meaning there. So I literally just lay out exactly what I do, all the bullet points, we walk through it. I say, do you fully understand that? And if they don't, we just walk it through it again, or just review the part that they don't understand. And you both got to be on the same page because
Yeah.
I've had it where like I walked through it and then they walked through it and then like 2 days later they're like, well, what about this? I was like, we didn't even talk about that. So it's kind of like a back and forth there, but It's got to be transparent and reviewable. If you got to
Mhm.
document it and they got to be able to go back to it. Um,
Yeah. I think that the user centeredness is like a really cool aspect. I recently finished reading a book that was about like user centered culture. And I guess it's been something that's only been around for like 20 years. Like since the last 20 years to now, like focusing on the user, like Amazon, for example, like that's been the whole new mindset shift. So I think having your mindset shift like with stakeholders, they're not just numbers anymore, or people who run projects, like they're people, and being transparent, building those relationships. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it. It's helped in your business. And especially like knowing their needs and just being like that transparent with them. Like, hey, if you don't understand, like let's talk through it again so you do understand so there's no problems down the road. I think that's a really cool perspective. Do you have any like for someone out there who might be struggling with building relationships with stakeholders, do you have any advice for them on kind of like something you would recommend that they do to better, solidify that?
yeah, I would say like if I had someone and we just weren't aligning or understanding each other, I would kind of write down or kind of think of like the end goal. Like I want to get there. Hopefully they want to get there. Otherwise, why are we working together? And so you just start there and just work backwards. You need to kind of understand where they're coming from because maybe their team is like going to get fully disrupted. Like they're gonna have to fully change the software they're on or how they use it or something. So it's a big change for them. And then also understand like the benefits of getting there. So there's something called if you're on the wrong foot, there's something from the book called Never Split the Difference. It's about
Mm.
negotiation. It's pretty famous. And it's called
It's the
labor.
CIA guy, right?
Yeah, the hostage,
Yeah.
maybe it's FBI, the hostage
Or
negotiator.
FBI. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's called labeling their fear and or an acquisition audit. It's like you come to the meeting and they're like, "Hey, my whole team's gonna have to change." So you already know that they're gonna say that. So you kind of say it up front. You're like, "I know your team has to change." Like you label their
Hmm.
fear, and actually psychologically, it kind of like lowers their defenses. Not that they need to be defending, but they are.
Yeah.
And so once you label their fear, you kind of go through their top three or five or the ones that you understand. Then they're usually more willing to be like, okay, at least you get me. Now I'll get you, or kind of how can we work through it? So I would suggest with that, if you're struggling seeing eye to eye with someone, kind of label their fears so they know you understand them, and then they'll be a little
Mhm.
more willing to understand you.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to like transparency too. Just, not hiding anything. Just throw it out on the table and say, hey, this is what you guys have. This is what we have. Like if it lines up, great, let's do it. If not, then it doesn't make sense. But I think that's a really good mindset. Do you ever like when you are on these calls, like for example, with your new startup, do you ever have to like set expectations or fix unrealistic expectations? And kind of what's your like best route for like to do that, to like be successful, keep the relationship, but then also, make sure the expectations are like where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I laugh because fixing unrealistic expectations is like sometimes that's like half the job. Like, um, so setting expectations goes back to transparency and it should be reviewable. Like the amount of times people like forget the next day or they were actually sending an email while you were talking, like, so they didn't listen. Like, so you got to set it, have it in bullet points or have the benefits or exactly the scope that's gonna be in the project and then just send it to everyone, have it posted on like the project website. Like people have got to know exactly where to go, and it's got to be pretty simple to find. You don't want like an 80 slide presentation that they have to scroll through. So that's to set it. And you should host a meeting to kind of like explain it.
Hmm.
Fixing unrealistic expectations, that one's a little hard because you set the expectations, and a lot of the times, especially with this AI stuff, most people don't know like truly the capability that it can like. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. Like it can achieve this much, and then once they see that or they see like this much, they automatically want it to like jump up here. They're like, "Oh my
Right.
gosh, like I can't believe it can do that. Can you make it like do my taxes tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Whoa, like this is a customer service agent. Like, it's something outlandish like that." And so it's kind of like, hey, this is kind of the scope that we agreed on. Like one real world example is like it still messes up. Like maybe it
Hmm.
answers the queries 97 or 93% of the time, like 100% accurate, but then unknown to me, like it'll just throw out like a random answer. It's like
Hmm.
completely off base, like will definitely confuse the customer, not a good experience. And so they kind of like, they're like, well, why they get upset? I'm like, well, look, like it's answered 900 messages correctly and 3 messages wrong. Like you kind of got to give it some leeway. It's going to mess up. And so you kind of got to kind of reel back in what their excited expectations got to and kind of reel back into reality. Like, look, this is what we were at. Look at where we are now. And that's not on the table, or like that's a whole nother conversation. Let's do that once we're done with this. Like, so I don't know. You kind of gotta, I would say go back and compare to where you are and where you're at,
Hmm.
or where you were and where you're at, and then kind of like reel them back down to the initial scope and help them understand that that's like usually a different conversation. It's like in project management, it's like that's a whole scope creep. Like we would have to kind of extend the project 2 months. Like that's a huge project. So, or a huge addition. Yeah. So that's a big thing I've been
Yeah.
dealing with. It's a little funny sometimes.
Yeah, I think AI is a great example because I remember, yeah, I mean, you probably know this too. Like when AI first blew up with ChatGPT, like there was people fearing that AI would like take over the world or like that all jobs would be lost except like software engineers. And
Yeah.
obviously now, as we have more research, like that's not happening anytime soon. Like it's a tool to be used rather than like a replacement. And it
Yeah.
kind of reels people in. But I mean, I'm sure with you use the AI and you show them the capabilities. Yeah, they just expect that to like take everyone's job, but you got to like kind of help them figure that out. Kind of pivoting towards AI and kind of with this new like whole venue that you've gone down. Do you want to give kind of like a brief description of what your company does, just so people out there can kind of hear about it? And then I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on like AI and kind of how you think people could adopt AI better in companies. So yeah, go ahead. Like, can you give like a brief description of kind of what you do?
Yeah. It's just, it's customer service, like tickets or, chatbots. Like, I'm moving over into voice as well, like calls.
Hmm.
And it's just like a customer service, I guess. It's not, I don't offer a product yet. Maybe that's one day, but like it's more of a service that I offer. Like I will build out like a full customer service kind of representative workplace for them. So it can answer, like if you do e-commerce, it's like it'll answer all the customers like chatbots. It can even like push product recommendations. It can track like the shipping and tell them when it's getting there. Like it can handle returns with certain parameters. Obviously, you don't want people returning everything. So it kind of takes, if they're a solo like preneur, like just kind of one person business, it takes a lot of the customer interaction kind of like off their shoulders. Um, and if they're not, if they're a bigger company, it kind of like lets their customers focus on like bigger problems because it can't solve everything. It solves probably between 65 and 80% of all customer kind of inputs.
Hmm.
Um, but it allows those guys to focus on like non-redundant, like if every 3 out of 5 messages you get, it's pretty much the same question. Maybe your website doesn't explain it well enough. That's kind of a waste of time for your customer service person. So that's where we're focused right now. I kind of forget the rest of your questions.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, that's awesome. Have you ever like do you reach any resistance with people when it comes to AI? Because I know, like for me, example, like I'm in school, obviously, but like teachers hate AI. They think they make it sound like it's like the black plague that's coming through and gonna ruin everything. But like I just know some people have that kind of like fear of it and resistance to adopting it. I'm more of like a pro adoption. Like it's gonna happen, it's already here. Might as well take advantage of it and learn from it. Do you ever like encounter people who have that resistance? And like how do you do or what do you do to like help them overcome that AI block that they have?
Yeah, there's a couple of different like types of resistance you get. There's the person that's comfortable, like everything runs great. Why change anything? Like, and that person is kind of like, well, I mean, this is literally a full efficiency overload. Like, I don't know. So there's the everything one runs great. There's the I'm old school. Like, I don't want to adopt this AI. It kind of scares me. Um, yeah, I've had a couple people be like, oh, we're a small business and we wouldn't want to lose jobs. I'm like, well, first off, a small business needs to be like as efficient as possible. And so this will, I mean, you literally like make your money back in like a month and a half. Like,
Yeah.
so it's like this is a no-brainer. And then the losing jobs, like that person can all do 1,000 other things. There's no way that your business is constrained by or isn't constrained. Like they can just do so much more with their time. I don't know. And then there's the teachers that are like, this is the worst thing to ever happen. And I'm just going to be full on. I need my customers. I want to talk to them, and that's okay. That's kind of like a different approach. It's like you want a very personal interaction with your customers. Um, I think there's definitely markets for that. And there's times for that, but there's also times where like just a quick automated or AI that understands your company, just a quick message or even a phone call, it's not needed. It's not like that's changing your customer's perspective. So this is different from like when I call my bank and they're like, press option one. Like I hate those.
Mhm.
Those
Yeah,
are
I think
so
everyone
annoying
does.
to use. Yeah, this is different. This is like if you've seen it, it's like a full on like conversation. Like even with the
Mhm.
voice, it's like it can fully understand you. It can respond in pretty much a human tone. Usually you can't really tell the difference.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a super interesting like field. I know a lot of people too, they're like trying to get into AI, but they just like don't know where to start. There's so much speculation out there and it's like such a big topic. For you, I mean like you've switched from IT project management, a pretty established company to, startup AI. How would you recommend that people who aren't as like versed in AI, how would you recommend that they start learning about AI to maybe help get rid of like some of these false notions that people have about what AI can do and what it like can provide for everybody.
Yeah. I would suggest you like look at your everyday life and kind of try to pinpoint things that you do even repeatedly, or it doesn't have to be like the same outcome every time. I guess like writing content is never gonna be the same outcome, but you do write it like every day, something like that. And you could learn an AI tool for like 10, 15, $20 or free so fast. I mean, there's so many of them out there. There's so many startups right now. You can jump on one and you could probably automate 10 or 15 things in your daily life right now, like really quickly.
Mhm.
So I would suggest you start somewhere in your personal life, kind of solve your own problem, and then kind of get the understanding because there are like you kind of got to understand how the AI thinks. It almost sounds
Yeah.
weird, but it's got like its mind of its own. And so when it like does something you don't expect, you kind of got to understand how to like dive into it. So you'll run into those problems by yourself, kind of using those problems. I would suggest you start there. Start with your own problem. Don't go out and try to like solve Microsoft's biggest AI problem. Like just start with your own problem. It's going to be something super small where you automate something, and then you'll be like, wow, that's really cool. Like, what else could I do? And
Yeah.
okay, go from there. There's a lot. You'll
There's a
go
lot
down
to be doing.
a really deep rabbit hole there if you just keep going through that.
I think getting started with it is a big thing for me, especially with AI. That's like my first thing that kind of got me into it. We had this user research class where we were going and doing like product interviews with users trying to figure out pain points. And we had to transcribe all of these interviews and there's like 20 of them and they're each like 45 minutes long. So like if you were to type that out, it'd be a nightmare. And like
Yeah,
back in the day, people did. And so I found this like sketchy AI off GitHub that like some guy threw together that like, who knows if it worked. And I ran it and it like transcribed it perfectly and it saved me like tons and tons of time. But like that was my first experience too, because like some of the words, like you said, like it's not perfect. Like it would mess up some of the words, so I'd have to re-listen to all of them and then like make sure it said what I thought it said. But like 98% of the words it got was like perfectly correct. And so
yeah,
I think for those people out there, like you said, who are like trying to get into it or just like even learn more about it and see how they can use it in their business or their daily lives, like just start somewhere and just start playing with it and fidgeting with it. And you'll learn, I'm sure, like you've seen, you'll learn faster to that than like trying to learn like how the internal organs of an AI works or like how the model works or like how it adjusts its weights. So
yeah.
kind of as we wrap up, because we're kind of coming close on time, what do you think is like the future for AI? Kind of being in the space, doing a lot of reading on it, helping businesses with your current company implement AI. How do you think AI is going to change, like maybe like customer service, like you're talking about, or kind of like the broader future?
Yeah. So I view AI as a tool. I mean, there's a lot like those doomsday people that are like AI is taking my job. I think AI is more of like I use it as like a creative like helper. Like I'm like, hey, I'm doing this for ChatGPT, like list out like an outline for me or what should I do next? And it'll point you in the right direction and you're like, oh my gosh, like I've been stumped because I don't know, you're brain fogged. Like I've been stumped for 2
Mhm.
hours. So I think it's a really good helper. And I think the future is going to kind of lean into that in pretty much every industry. And
Mhm.
like that company Klarna, 700 people, like or the AI doing the work of 700 people there. It's the AI agents. That's kind of what GPT tried to get into. I think at their year launch in November, they kind of like released a GPT store and like it wasn't really what it was hyped up to be yet. But I think that's kind of the future is where you're gonna have like the customer service agent that's full AI. It'll talk to the customer and then it'll like submit a ticket and that could just go to another AI agent that's like receiving tickets. Like I think the
Mhm.
agents are going to be able to kind of start like bouncing off of each other. And I mean, it doesn't really matter what industry you're in. There's not, especially, I mean, I think tech focused, but like even in my old job, project management, there were a lot of things where like our team could have used like a full AI agent and it would have saved me hours every week. Like,
Mhm.
and that's just me. There were tons of project managers. Um, and so I think like these agents that are going to slowly start saving hours on hours every week, and then they're going to kind of build, I don't know, it'll be
Yeah.
interesting, but that's definitely the future I'm leaning towards. That's what GPT is full in on. So
Yeah,
really cool.
it'll be cool to see. Yeah,
That's
it's
the
kind of in
reason I
that
kind of,
like
that's the reason, sorry, that's the reason I kind of jumped
there
ship.
you
I was
go.
like, learn about it right now because it's like ground zero, year zero. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't know, in 10 years, like if you think about how we're holding an iPhone now,
Yeah.
when you and I aren't even that old, but when we were born, there weren't iPhones at all. Like
Yeah.
I had a flip phone. And so I don't know. The 10 or 15-year timeline is kind of like where my head's at, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, no, for sure. Even think about like VR and like how virtual
Yeah.
environments like exist now from like even 10 years ago where like you had like the most basic iPhones just doing basic things. So anyways, I'm sure we could talk for hours about AI. I definitely have with multiple people, but we'll save that for another time. But thank you so much again for taking the time to hop on tonight. I know that these insights will be valuable. I think someone finds value in this, and it's just really cool to share information with people out there who are looking to continue to grow in their career, you know, in AI, trying to expand AI and what they're doing with AI. So, thanks again so much for taking the time tonight, Brennan.
Yeah, thank you. It was good catching up. Good luck in the rest of your basketball season and also in school finishing out. That's exciting.